We have spoken in the beginning of the month of Elul that the name Elul, is an abbreviation of a number of important concepts. We said Anile Dodi V'Dodili, the moment of relationship, strengthening our relationship with God. And we also spoke about the concrete things that we have to do, amongst them, adding in the mitzvah of tzedakah. Where do we find this? The word Elul, in the story of Purim, or I should say in the mitzvahs of Purim, where the Megillah tells us that on the day of Purim we're supposed to send gifts to friends and charity to the poor, and the words there are Ish l're'ehu umatanot le'evyonim, to give to each other food gifts and to the poor people charity. Ish l're'ehu aleph lamed umatanot le'evyonim vav lamed forms the word Elul, a relationship between Purim and the month of Elul, and as we said, to indicate that we have to do it with joy. Interesting enough, there is another direct connection between Purim and the parasha of this week. Parashat Vayelech, which is always read in the vicinity of Rosh Hashanah, either days before, this week, a whole week before, because we have Nitzav and Vayelech together. But there at one point, the Torah says the following. God speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu. I know that your time of passing has come. You are going to lie with your ancestors. And I know the result is going to be with your presence not being there. People will start stray from the path that you've been teaching them and leading them for the last 40 years. Without their leader they got used to, they can get lost. And what's going to be, says God forbid, they're going to start following ways of other nations. And God says, on that day, my anger will be released against them. And I will conceal myself, and I will conceal myself from them. I will distance myself from them. And many misfortunes and calamities will befall on them. And then they will realize that it's because they strayed. And God continues in verse 18, interesting verse 18, Chai, that the Torah said, God says the following, V'noichi haster aster ponai bayom hahu. I will make myself as if completely oblivious, double concealment. The Gemara in Chulin, when the Gemara in Chulin asks, where do we find the reference to Esther in the Torah? And the Gemara says, quotes that verse, V'noichi haster aster, concealment. Esther, which is the name of that Esther Amalka, Queen Esther, but Esther also meaning concealment, therefore, bingo relationship. Now, obviously there's a deeper meaning than just the fact that we found two similar words. Now, what's the story of Esther? The story of Purim is that unfortunately, due to their straying from the directives of Mordechai HaTzadik, the teachings of Torah, a calamity befell upon them. Haman wanted to destroy the entire Jewish community. Came Esther, the queen, the savior, seemingly, implored the king, and we know the rest of the story of Purim. But really, we know that it's not Esther who made the miracle. It is God who is hidden behind that person of Esther, behind the facade of natural phenomena which we could attribute over here, saying that Esther, the queen, Achashverosh, loves her, and what don't you do for your wife? As he says, half of my kingdom I give her. But we realize that it's much more than this. It is God who is concealing himself in the laws of nature so as to protect and save us. Why? Because we have to go seek the godliness behind that concealment. Here says the pasuk, the word v'anoichi, I will seal, I will conceal myself. Anoichi also comes the same anoichi that we have in the Ten Commandments. God starts the Ten Commandments, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God. What is the I? The I represents the level, the essence of godliness, which has no name, no definition. It is beyond all naming. It's beyond all defining. A name represents a specific characteristic. a specific manifestation of God. But when we talk about the essence of God, I am Anochi, says God. Even in the time where you are straying from me, and I'm concealing myself from you, I want you to know I am present. Anochi, the essence is always present because you never see it. What is our task? Just like in the Megillah, the story of the Megillah. Mordechai called the people back to Torah mitzvahs. Mordechai called people back to get involved in the proper way of Judaism. God revealed himself through that cloth, through that Hester to Esther. Same thing is what we're having today. God concealed himself in a pandemic. But really, in this pandemic, we see that it's all the hand of God. And therefore, God, we recognize, please take us out of this exile, and we see you without concealment.